Okay, picture a beach. That perfect postcard image. Pristine sand, waves gently rolling in. Now, just completely flip that image in your head. Instead, imagine, well, a suffocating mountain of plastic junk decay. That was Versova Beach in Mumbai back in 2015. Not paradise, more like a graveyard. For nature, and honestly for hope itself. So today, we're doing a deep dive into this incredible story, the story of Afroz Shah. He's a young lawyer who saw this mess, and he didn't walk away. His single act, believe it or not, kicked off the largest beach cleanup in history. Our mission here is to really unpack that. How did one person's simple action spark a global movement? And maybe more importantly, what lessons are in there for us when we face these huge, overwhelming challenges?
Yeah, and what's so powerful about this story, I think, is how it happened. How that one small individual action, which seemed kind of insignificant at first, just built this unstoppable momentum. It really shows that resilience isn't just, toughing it out. It's about actively creating something new. Like you said, it's way more than just a cleanup story. It's really this profound account of determination, sheer grit, and seeing hope emerge from, well, utter despair.
So Afroz Shah, his journey started when he came back home, right?
Yeah.
He was looking for that peace you get from the ocean, only to find Versova Beach just buried, literally buried under layers and layers of garbage. The sand, the waves, gone, just replaced by this stench of, well, neglect, resignation, really. It's such a grim picture. And you think, okay, most people, what would they do? Probably just stare, right? But Afroz saw something else.
Most people absolutely would. They'd complain, maybe mourn what was lost, feel completely helpless. But Afroz, he made this really radical, but also incredibly humble choice, armed with, well, basically nothing, a pair of gloves, some trash bags, and this stubborn hope, which must have seemed frankly absurd at the time. He just knelt down in all that filth with his elderly neighbor, Harban Shmethor, and they just started picking up trash.
Wow. So just the two of them, filling a few bag. I mean, that's barely a drop in the ocean, literally. You can just imagine how daunting that must have felt.
Exactly. Tiny. And you can almost hear the reaction, can't you? The skepticism, people laughing, sneering, shouting things like, isn't this the government's job? Or why are you even bothering? It's impossible. To most people, it just looked completely pointless.
Right. It sounds like the kind of thing where anyone would just give up.
Yeah.
So facing that ridicule, what kept him going? Showing up week after week? What was it that really cemented their resolve?
That's where you see the real power of his approach. He just kept going every weekend's back again. His belief seemed to be that real change doesn't start with big speeches or plans. It starts with humility, with just doing the work, that persistent, almost monotonous effort, and that quiet persistence, even with people mocking him. It's just incredible. It really became the foundation, the bedrock for everything that came after. He basically just outlasted the doubt with grit and a trash bag.
But every big idea, every movement, it always faces pushback, doesn't it? Shadows, obstacles. Afroz Shah's initiative started so small, so humbly. It must have run into some massive hurdles as word got out. What were the big ones? The doubts, the resistance.
Oh, it was far from easy. As more people noticed, the skepticism actually grew in some ways. Official authorities, often lukewarm, kind of indifferent at first, neighbors. Some were indifferent, some were actually hostile, maybe seeing it as a nuisance, or maybe it exposed things they didn't want exposed, like local dumping. And the common argument you heard was, real change needs big machines, bureaucracy, new laws, not just some lawyer and an old man picking up trash. And then there's the physical side, the emotional toll. It was relentless. You'd have days where huge waves would just wash ashore tons of fresh garbage, wiping out weeks of hard work. Imagine that feeling. Every step forward felt like it was met by 1,000 plastic bottles washing back in. Afroz definitely faced exhaustion, despair, that temptation to just give up. Plus the critics calling it naive or just a publicity stunt. Even some volunteers, they lost faith sometimes. The sheer scale of it just eats away at you. But what's really telling is how he kept going despite all that. It wasn't about fighting back loudly. It was just showing up again, day after day, year after year, facing those dragons of doubt, as you might say.
And yet, slowly, almost so you couldn't see it happening at first, this amazing transformation started. It's hard to even picture going from that initial scene.
It really is. But people watching, maybe just curious at first, they started to help out. And those helpers, they became believers, volunteers. Started as just a handful, right? Then it swelled. Hundreds, eventually thousands. Each weekend became this ritual, a date with the ocean, everyone armed with gloves and hope and this incredible determination. And then the wider world started paying attention. Journalists came, brought cameras. Government officials who were maybe hesitant before started taking a real interest. And over 3 years, This is incredible. Shah and this growing army of volunteers, they removed more than 13,000 tons of garbage. 13,000 tons became the largest beach cleanup in history.
That number is just staggering. 13,000 tons. And you can see the result. Golden sands appearing again after decades hidden under trash. But then, maybe the most magical part you mentioned earlier, the sea turtles. They'd been gone for 20 years, and they came back. They started nesting on the clean sand. That's such a powerful symbol, isn't it?
It's huge. Absolutely. Life literally came back. And not just, the turtles and crabs, but the spirit of the community, too. That single act, that consistent effort had literally redrawn the shoreline. It's this amazing reminder of how small deeds can genuinely spiral into something revolutionary. It wasn't just about cleaning a beach anymore. It was about restoring a whole ecosystem, a whole sense of possibility.
Of course, even with that kind of success, it probably wasn't all smooth sailing from there. The cleanup itself was massive, but keeping it clean, sustaining that change, that must have brought a whole new set of challenges, maybe even more complex ones.
Exactly right. The critics didn't all go away. Some kept questioning if a grassroots effort like this could really last. Would the beach just, go back to being a dumping ground without deeper systemic changes? And there were real practical problems. Some local businesses, for instance, they actually blamed the cleanups for exposing their own illegal dumping. Can you believe that? And you still had practical issues like nearby streams and drains constantly funneling new waste onto the beach. It made the struggle feel, at times, like this never-ending cycle.
That's a totally different kind of fight, isn't it? Dealing with the source, not just the symptom. So how did Afroz tackle those deeper systemic problems beyond just picking up the trash on the sand?
Well, his approach wasn't really anger or confrontation. It was more about relentless education. He led these really extensive campaigns, often going door to door in nearby slums, schools, communities, teaching people about waste management, the value of recycling, just basic respect for nature. And it wasn't just talking. In some places, they set up small local collection points. They even helped create little micro-enterprises around waste sorting. So people had a real, tangible, economic reason to be part of the solution. He really got that true change wasn't just about clearing the beach. It was about changing minds, changing habits, changing systems. And importantly, he was always open about the challenges, about what still needed doing. No pretense of having all the answers. He put it so well himself, didn't he? He said something like, "The ocean isn't anyone's property. It belongs to all of us. If we pollute it, we are poisoning our own future." That really sums it up.
And the story, amazingly, didn't just stay contained to Versova Beach, did it? His influence started spreading, rippling outwards.
It really did. News of the cleanup just took off. It inspired similar efforts all across India and then, incredibly, around the globe. You started seeing other big beach cleanups happening, people starting river restoration projects, schools adding new environmental programs, and they'd often point back to Versova as the inspiration. Afroz himself got recognized internationally, of course. He received the UN's Champion of the Earth Award, which is a huge deal. But the really profound thing, I think, is just the idea itself. That one person, literally knee-deep in garbage, could capture the imagination and spark action in thousands of people worldwide. That's something else.
And that really brings us to the universal lesson here, doesn't it? Afroz Shah's story, it feels like a living metaphor for our times, for the crises we face, but also the hopes we have. It makes you think. Each of us, in our own way, we stand before our own shoreline. Maybe it's a huge personal challenge, maybe a social injustice we see, or just an overwhelming problem that feels way too big to even start tackling.
Absolutely. And the instinct so often is to turn away, right? To say, oh, that's too big for me, or that's someone else's job, or only governments or heroes can fix that. But Shah's story forces us to ask a different question, a really crucial one. What if you just started anyway? Not because you knew you'd succeed, not because you had a grand plan, but just because it felt like the right thing to do. What if you stopped focusing only on the final outcome and instead measured the worth in just the sincerity, the consistency of the action itself?
Yeah, every movement starts small, like a whisper. Every tide is just countless drops coming together.
Exactly. Shah could have easily folded when people laughed, when he was exhausted, when those waves kept bringing the trash back. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to stop. But he didn't. He met that challenge head on, day after day after day. He faced the ridicule, the physical hardship, that feeling of doing the same hard thing over and over, and he proved that persistence, that quiet, stubborn effort, that's its own kind of heroism.
It's such a powerful reminder. You don't need to be a lawyer or a scientist or some famous public figure to actually make a difference. You just need to begin. Afroz Shah really showed us that history isn't just shaped by the big, grand gestures. It's shaped by the relentless repetition of small acts. Acts done with love, with conviction.
His journey completely shifts how you might look at a huge problem, away from feeling overwhelmed and despairing towards seeing the quiet, undeniable power in just being consistent. So maybe as we think about his resolve, the question for each of us is, what's that seemingly impossible mountain of plastic in your own life or in your community? The one that's just waiting for you to take that first, maybe small but determined step.
The ocean of problems out there can seem endless, right? Impossible to clean up entirely. But maybe within each of us, there's that same resolve that Afroz found. The resolve to change the tides, even just a little bit. Just like his hands transformed that one beach, maybe our actions, however small they seem, can help restore some hope, some dignity, some balance to the places we call home. So maybe just take that first handful of sand. Destiny really does await those who dare to act, even if you feel like you're just one person, standing against a sea of indifference.